Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch the show.
Phone? That's stealing.
And the police fined me. Police gave me the fine, $15,000. So I loaned the money.
Okay, I could just be grasping for straws and looking for evidence, confirmation bias, if you will. But if we're going off of the dependent personality spectrum for him as a working hypothesis, of which we have no idea, we'd have to ask him, if he does suffer from that, and then we just learned that in the past he was selling lost phones, and some of the lost phones are stolen phones, and so he is trafficking in stolen goods and not reporting it. And I suspect that if you looked hard enough into the phone, you'd be able to figure out whose phone it was, but that he wasn't doing it anyway. So he was caught by the police, and he was fined a lot of money. So we see in the past that he had a job and he was earning money, but it was a job that was doomed from the start. And for dependent people, sometimes they will do this. One, because they believe that they don't qualify for real jobs, and so they'll look for a job that seems easier to do. And I wonder if for Jihoon, this is just total speculation. There's a lot of me just making stuff up, but let's say there's a lot of jobs available in Seoul. It's a big city. I'm sure there are a lot of different careers available. And he thinks about, oh, if I do that, I could do that, I could do that. But he's like, but all those things involve me being competent, involve me being smart and able to do things and interacting with people and getting things done. And even though he could do those things, he could certainly learn. But if he had dependent personality, he would believe, I have no ability to do those things. I am completely incapable of that. And I need help from other people. And working in the real world, you can't get that kind of help from other people. So he's like, well, and then he finds out about this one job where he can work from home and he can stay with his parents. And he just takes these phones and he fixes them up or erases them or something and then gives them back, and then he sells them online or something. Pretty low key, right? But of course, any super easy job like that might carry with it some kind of catch, which is the fact that he's dealing in illegal goods. So one, he could fall into a job like that because of his assumption of incompetence, and he assumes that he can't qualify or perform at regular jobs in the quote unquote real world. The other reason why he might do this is fall into a job like that is because of a subconscious motivation of he knows eventually I'm going to get caught. If I keep doing this, eventually the police are going to get me, or there's a high likelihood, and that'll put me even further in the hole, and it'll be evidence that I can't function on my own, and people will have to take care of me. I can look to my parents or whoever's taking care of me, and I could say, look at me. Look what happened to me when I tried to get a job. I'm a complete failure, and now I'm in debt a lot, and so you have to take care of me. Some dependent individuals will do that. It'll be a subconscious self-sabotage to keep them in a dependent position because they don't believe they can function otherwise.
If I told you, you will not marry me.
I knew I didn't know everything about Jihoon, but finding out that Jihoon broke the law, that's something that he should have told me before I even made the decision to move to South Korea.
Yeah, that is a huge trust violation. For him to wait until they're married and she has now moved to South Korea to say, oh, by the way, I used to do illegal things. I'm now in tremendous debt, and we're going to live with my parents for the rest of our lives, or at least for a long period of time. And I don't really qualify for any kind of work. Now that she's locked in, now that she's in this position. One, that's a huge betrayal. Two, she is now wondering, what else is he withholding from me? This is the effect of lying by omission. When you leave things out, people think, well, what else are you leaving out? Even though in your mind, you might be thinking, I'm leaving nothing else out. This is the only thing I was lying by omission about. How could the other person know that? They would be stupid to assume that there's nothing else. So I'm guessing Deavan is going to have a hard time trusting, which makes a lot of sense. So he has a lot of making up to do, given the fact that he lied to her by omission.
Without soju, Korean style.
I've never tried it.
Oh, soju is strong. Tastes like medical alcohol. You try.
Yeah, shoju is terrible. I mean, I'm guessing there's good shoju, maybe, but of the alcohols, shoju is rough. And he just said, yeah, it's like medical alcohol. It's not that bad. But usually you mix it with things to make it more drinkable. But it looks like they're going to try to drink it straight, which I don't recommend to anybody. But, to each its own, to each their own.
Jihoon's friends, about all of the secrets he has.
You know 중2병? 중2병.
No.
Korean means middle school.
Jihoon don't have care, don't have worry.
No worry.
Jihoon like children.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure they're not saying Jihoon likes children. They're saying Jihoon is like a child. And so we're getting confirmation from the friends that he doesn't take on responsibilities. It sounds like that's what they're saying, that he is carefree. He doesn't have adult-like mentalities when it comes to career and living on his own, that kind of thing. So we're getting a confirmation of that from his friends.
분명히 하지 말라고 했거든. 위험한 거라고.
So you told him it's dangerous.
I saw opportunity. I took it. I was greedy.
So I've been running on the hypothesis that he might suffer from at least some dependency spectrum. And I've been hypothesizing that possibly when he was trying to find a career and he has this childish, dependent nature, he thinks about getting a career in this, a career in that. He's like, well, but I'm going to fail in that. And I need my parents to tell me what to do along the way. And you can't bring your parents to work to tell you what to do. And so he flounders in his careers because he just doesn't believe he can function on his own. And that is the central schema of dependent personalities. You just don't believe. You're completely distorted in the belief about what you're capable of and what you're capable of learning. And so he needs money because he's getting older or his parents are putting pressure on him or something. And this opportunity comes along that is illegal in nature. And he figures, well, it doesn't sound like it's that hard to do, because I just have to accept these stolen goods and then I sell it. I just have to travel. It sounds like he might have been kind of a stolen cell phone mule of some kind, just a delivery person. And he might have thought, well, that doesn't require much competence, and I probably won't screw that up. And then that attracts him to jobs that are potentially dangerous for him financially because of the fines that he gets into. The other thing that I've been hypothesizing is that dependent people sometimes get into jobs where they subconsciously know they're going to fail at, such that they will fail, and people will then say, oh, you are a failure. You can't do things on your own. I need to take care of you, which is the ultimate safe place for the dependent person, is when they are being treated as though they're 10 or 5 and seen as though they're 10 or 5 years old. And if you self-sabotage, then people will say, oh my goodness, you are incompetent. I need to make every decision for you, which ultimately is what the dependent person wants. Now, I'm saying wants, and I should put them in quotes, because deeper down than that, they actually want to succeed like anyone else does, but they just have this belief based on their early childhood traumas. Sometimes you can develop this childhood trauma as a result of being bullied at school or having ADHD or having a learning disorder or something. You're struggling in school, and you're given all these messages that you're a loser and that you can't do things on your own. But the problem is that no one is recognizing that you have this difference and treating you as a child appropriately. We can account for these kinds of differences in kids, but a lot of kids are just labeled as bad or hyperactive, or there's something wrong with them. And the child ends up believing, yes, I am bad, I am incompetent. And when they try to succeed, given their difference, they will run into barriers and look at, once again, there's something wrong with me and I can't function without other people. Now, I don't know if Jihoon suffers from this. There's really no direct evidence, but we're starting to compile more and more evidence along these lines. One of the classic labels that will be put on people with dependent personality is childish. He's calling himself childish. His friends are calling him childish. So that would be an hypothesis that I'd pursue if I were to treat someone like him.
That everything is going to be okay and that you're going to not lie anymore and that we're going to get
Enough.
the apartment.
Enough. Too much worry.
I feel like you don't worry enough.
Very, very silly.
Okay, so this is concerning. This is a mode that we've seen in other characters, other cast members, but not with Jihoon yet. Or we've seen a little bit of this, but not to this extent, which doesn't bode well because usually these kinds of problems get worse and worse over time because they never go to couples therapy or individual therapy. Or if they do, they go to one session expecting that that's going to change anything, which it rarely would. But we see with Jihoon right now, or we see with Deavan, that Deavan is worried about the future, which makes total sense given everything that is happening and everything that she's learning about. And Jihoon is saying, enough, be quiet. You worry too much. You're silly. There's something wrong with you. This mode is not a typical mode for him, but it is interesting and it's not functional. It is not rational and it's not going to help. Now, if right around the corner he has success lined up, then it doesn't justify this tone with her, but it would at least explain a little bit. But the impression I'm getting is that he has no skills, no career, no prospects. So why would he do this? Well, he might get into a mode where he feels shamed, where he feels as though someone is putting him down, and he doesn't have any mature way of dealing with that. Say your spouse is complaining about you and about your career, about, you don't earn enough money. Well, it takes maturity to be able to hear that criticism and say, okay, where are they coming from? And, okay, you know what, honey, you're right. And I am having some struggles right now. I have some plans. I'm working on it. So, it's okay that you're upset, but I'd like you to be a little nicer to me, and I'd like you to tone it down a little bit because I'm definitely working on it. You're right to be concerned, but it's hurting my feelings how often you bring it up. You could say something like that, right? But that requires maturity. It requires self-esteem. It requires that sort of behavior being modeled. A shortcut to that of like, I'm being criticized, I'm being harmed, my feelings are hurt. A shortcut to that, and perhaps a childish way of reacting, is shut up. We're done. Stop talking, which appears to be what he's doing.
You don't care.
But how am I supposed to know it's paid off? Because, Junie, it's not a personal problem when we're going to be getting married. I will sign the papers so we can get married if I can start managing the money so I know where it goes.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the only option here, but that might actually really help. Now, it also lends itself into the dependent role, that he's pushing her into the role of caretaker of him, the person who is in charge of all the finances, which might play into the dependency and might keep him in that dependent role. So this might be the beginning of him transferring subconsciously, usually it's not conscious, his dependency from his parents on to Deavan, socializing Deavan to believe that he's incompetent and needs someone to essentially be his mom and take care of him. So we might be seeing the very beginning of that process. If a therapist were involved that knew about dependent personality, which some therapists don't, many therapists do, they'd be able to see this beginning phase and say, whoa, 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 that's fine, Deavan, if that's what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But given Jihoon's traumas and given what already is beginning to happen, we want Jihoon to figure out for himself and to be independent, to be able to be competent and succeed in his own way. That might mean that he makes some mistakes along the way. And this is where it gets really weird. So I don't know if Jihoon suffers from this, but if I were treating them and if I were treating a couple like this and the Jihoon person in my office did have dependent personality, the best case scenario, what we would want to have happen is that the dependent person is given a chance to make their own mistakes, and they probably will make many. But they need to be able to make those mistakes and learn that it's okay when they make mistakes, and learn how to learn from their mistakes, and learn how to trust that they will be able to learn from their mistakes, and learn that other people will allow them to make their mistakes, and learn that other people believe that they can learn from their mistakes. And that needs to happen over and over again before they actually grow up, before they actually become a mature adult who does things on their own and doesn't self-sabotage all the time. But that middle, so there's 3 phases. The first phase is complete dependency. The third phase is independency. The middle phase is sort of independent, but making a ton of mistakes. I mean, all of us, when we were 13 through 22, we made a lot of mistakes, right? But it's okay to make mistakes when you're that age because you're not given that much responsibility typically, and the consequences aren't that large. If you get fired from a job at the age of 14, it's not that big of a deal. It's not the end of your career. You didn't really have a career to begin with usually. But when you're dealing with someone who, I think he's 29, something like that, the issue is he now has to go through those adolescent phases now. He has to experience life and approach his development of his competence as if he were 13. We have to go back in time, which means that there's going to be a lot of messiness. But that messiness usually causes the Deavans of the world to step in and say, okay, I'm going to do everything for you. And then the dependency vicious cycle continues. But we need that middle phase where the Jihoons of the world will also be incredibly terrified of doing things on their own. And they will always be trying to suck people in consciously by asking for help and saying, what should I do? What should I do? You tell me. I don't know what to do. Or by unconsciously sucking people in by failing and causing people to take over.
Okay.
Okay. My money, your money. Yeah. Your management. Your manager.
All right, so it's interesting. He's agreeing that, okay, you will manage. And he seemed extremely okay with it right off the bat. Now, on one hand, it might actually be a good idea that she manages the money because he is not doing so well. On the other hand, if we're really trying to create a long-lasting change so that he can do things on his own and function well and achieve things and succeed, this might actually be going in the opposite direction.
Jihoon agreeing that I can take over financial responsibility is making me feel better about getting the marriage papers today.
I mean, at the very least, it's a good idea that she is aware of what's happening financially for the family, that she understands all the bills and all the debt and where money is coming in. I wish more couples on the show actually did share that information. A lot of times the men will be in complete control of it and they won't let anyone else in on that. And that traditional way of operating can be fine if that's what people are looking for, but a lot of the conflicts that these couples get into is a result of that bifurcation of the responsibilities. So maybe this will help the two of them. Let's watch.
Is making steps in the right direction to earn my trust.
You want 100% believe me?
Maybe 75%.
You love me 75%.
No, I love you 100%. That's why I'm still marrying you.
I
and
love you
only trust
200%.
Sometimes there's some great humor that he has. I don't know if we just have a similar sense of humor or something, but some of the jokes he makes I find delightful. But that was interesting. So she's saying, I trust you 75%. And then he's like, uh-oh, you don't love me. He says, you only love me 75%? She's like, no, I love you 100%, but I only trust you 75%. That was a pretty good interaction between the two of them. A lot of cast members would hear 75% trust and they would be extremely devastated by this. We actually saw a little bit a similar situation between Mike and Natalie. Natalie was having some reservations about the marriage or, about getting married because of the conflicts that they had been into recently. And all Mike heard was, you don't love me at all. Whereas Jihoon right there was like, oh, what am I hearing? And then asked a question. She clarified in a good way, no, I love you 100%, but it's the 75% trust. That's the issue. So those are separate issues. And then he feels reassured and then he makes a joke. So I just want to point out that that was a functional thing. And she has every reason to believe, trust. In fact, if I were her, I would also say 75%. I would say, well, he's a good guy. He's trustworthy in a lot of ways, but with finances and the fact that he lied to me by omission, yeah, definitely took a hit of trust, but I still trust him mostly because of a lot of the track record we have thus far. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.